All right, so I'm finally showered up and all clean, chilling in my living room on the tube, and there's my Christmas tree. Let's get into it. I said I would tell you a story about a friend of mine who messaged me, actually, I messaged him, then we called and we talked, and he purchased a Amazon Mercedes-Benz diesel Sprinter alternator from Amazon, put it in his car, put it in his van, started the van up, and then let it run for a long period of time, thinking he was going to. Well, you can use your alternator to charge up your battery. If your battery's good, it'll take the charge. If your battery's bad, it's not. You're just wasting fuel and you're wasting the life of your alternator. But yeah, sometimes if we run a battery low or dead, we have to jump start the car, and then we'll go for a road test. And if not, I'll leave it running outside and let the battery charge up. So what he said to me is he left the truck running for about 2 hours. And it's a diesel truck, and they're pretty much made for that. And he said he was at the back of the van and he smells something. He wasn't sure if it was the catalytic converter on his diesel truck acting up. He wasn't sure, just a weird smell. And then he went to the front of the truck and the battery is boiling. So what does that mean? That the fluid inside the battery, the acid, was leaking out of the battery. And he said he shut the van off and he's like, what the hell's going on here? Like, he's never seen this before. And I said, that is an overcharged state, meaning the alternator is overcharging the battery, or your battery has a bad cell, and it could do that too. I said, but did you test the alternator after you installed it? And he said, no, there was no battery light on. Now, this is the weird thing about some charging systems. Some battery lights will illuminate if it's overcharging. Some engine lights will come on if it's overcharging. Most of the time, you will get a battery light if the alternator is not producing a minimum amount of voltage. Typically, anything under 12 volts. Typically. And actually, some Fords will trigger a charge warning if it's not, I think, 13.8. I forget what the spec is on some of these newer Fords. And we really don't have any luck with these newer Fords with aftermarket alternators. We try and use a new alternator, aftermarket new. And if we can't get an aftermarket new or OEM new, then we're stuck with just trying to get the customer back on the road. We do not use Amazon and eBay alternators for customer work. I have personally ordered an alternator from eBay, and it actually overcharged. Not enough to cause a battery problem, but not enough for me to say that it was continuous use for my Monte Carlo. I did order another performance alternator that I wanted it to have a higher charge rate at idle, and it was successful. So for me, I would take the risk. For my customers, forget about it. It's new starters, new alternators, and if we can't get those parts that's unobtainium, we'll talk about it. So anyway, back to the story. They never tested the alternator after they started it. His test was, I started the car up, there was no battery warning light on like he had with his previous alternator. And I said, that doesn't mean anything. You need to put a gauge on that and find out what it's charging. I said, chances are that alternator that you installed was way overcharging, and that's what caused your battery to boil and start smoking. Now, excuse me, your battery's ruined. You're not saving that battery. He said, nah, I should have just bought the new one from Mercedes. I think it was $600 or $700. And he said, AutoZone was $500 for a new and $250 for a reman. And I said, dude, as much as you use this van and you drive, you really want peace of mind. But even some OEM parts are problematic. So it's less likely with new OEM parts and new aftermarket. And here's a scale. Less likely to fail new OEM. And that's not 100%. That's like 90%. positive experience. Then you go new aftermarket, it's about 75%. And then if you go remanufactured, you're all the way down here to a 50% or less success rate for reman alternators and starters. Just my experience, everyone. But yeah, he was, and I think he said that alternator was $250 from Amazon, and I said it was probably bad right out of the box. Amazon doesn't test sellers' products. Some sellers say they test. I've seen alternators come into my shop with it says it's been tested 3 times. Why do you have to test a product 3 times? The person who sold it to me that was sitting on their shelf didn't take it out of the box and test it. And then the guy who threw it on the shelf after they unloaded it from the pallet didn't test it before they gave it to me. And then the guy who delivered it and dropped it on my floor, how many times I've opened an alternator and the lugs broke, the pigtails broke, the cases broke, the pulleys bent. A lot of things happen in shipping. But yeah, and that sucks. Mercedes diesel Sprinter van. That is a dirty, smelly, stinky job. It's not a new Mercedes. I'm sure it's got a little bit of fluid seepage. And it's not a fun job. It's not like the old days where you open the hood and it's 2 bolts and 3 wires. It ain't like that anymore, especially on that. But I said I would tell you that story, and then tomorrow I will finish up the story about brake pedal pulsations and variations in thickness and, all the ins and outs of engineered run out. Actually, it's not even engineered. It's lack of quality in parts. It takes so much time and money for manufacturers to test all their products and then recheck all the manufacturing processes. That is so much money that they cut out of their processes now, and they leave it on you. And a lot of used car dealers do this. They will fix certain things on the car, and then they will sell it to you. They already know there's a bunch of other things wrong with it, but what they're hoping is you won't catch it. That's facts, people. So, and that's the same thing that the new car dealerships are doing. They're like, yep, we know this software is buggy. Yep, we know this LCD display has problems. Yep. And Anthony's car, yep, we know we have an airbag issue. Yep, we know we have a brake warning light issue. But how many people are going to come back and have it taken care of? How many people are going to complain about it? They play the same game, new car dealerships and manufacturers, that used car dealerships do. That's a fact, Jack. You think you're buying a good used vehicle in certain people's lots. They hide so much that's wrong with it, and they know the person who typically is buying a car isn't going to notice that they had the cheap guy paint it, that certain things are glued back together, that the frame was patched with fiberglass resin and Bondo and painted over. Yes, that's a fact, people. But if you don't... someone said this to me a long time ago. Inspect what you expect. So if you don't know, then you need to hire somebody to help you buy a used car. And buying a new car, they don't test them. Buying a brand new car, they do not test them in real world environments. They used to do all that, but that costs too much money. You know what they're worried about? Profits in their bottom line. That's why Ford Escape's doors were falling off people's cars, because they didn't test opening and close the door. I don't know how many times you got to open and close your driver's door in 10 years. Thousands of times. If they would have did that to that specific vehicle, they would have knew that the metal in the door and everything that they put together wasn't sufficient enough integrity for the consumer to have. And it cost them millions of dollars. GM, the same thing. We build our engines from scratch, raw materials, and you're not checking cylinder wall finish. You're not checking crankshaft finish. You're not checking tolerances. It's all bullshit, dude. Run the line, and whatever happens, happens. Same thing with our parts business. Run that whole line. We don't care if 30% failure rate happens. They know that dealers are going to sit on certain inventory, and it's never going to hit the market. Then they know guys like me who buy parts are going to sit on it for weeks, if not months, if not years, and then when they go to use it for a builder project, it's shit and it's out of warranty. They know all the ins and outs of how to play the consumer with them engineering defects, bugs, shitty products, the lowest quality plastics and materials, the lowest quality LEDs, the lowest quality engineering and manufacturing into your engines and transmission. They know the math. Same thing with that alternator for that Mercedes-Benz. Somebody got a line of them. Some of them are good. Some of them are bad. But how many people are going to wind up returning it? Most of those guys are going to sit on the shelf for a long period of time, and it's never back on the manufacturer over a certain period of time. I have a guy that's in the radiator and heating business, and he buys containers of radiators, evaporators, and all this, and he gets bad stuff. But he doesn't know until he gets through that product line. Some of them are bent. Some of them are distorted. Some of them are bowed. Some of them have a pinhole in it. They don't check every product. That's a fact, Jax. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and hype my videos.